All right, so are we ready to dive into this deep dive you sent over about becoming a photography teacher? I have to say, some of the stuff you sent over is really making me want to dust off my old camera.
Yeah, it's really interesting stuff. You've given us a lot to unpack here. Everything from lesson planning to some really interesting articles about how AI is changing hiring for creatives.
I know it's amazing how technology touches everything these days, even art, right? But first things first, let's talk about the actual job. This RoleCatcher career guide makes the whole photography teacher thing sound so rewarding. What stood out to you the most about it?
Hmm. It's interesting you should say that. That balance the guide talks about. That you're not just teaching the technical side of things, like the aperture shutter speed, all that. You're actually nurturing someone's artistic vision.
Yeah.
It's like being an art coach, but for their creative eye through photography.
Yeah, that's such a cool way to put it. And then seeing your students' work showcased in exhibitions. Talk about a proud teacher moment.
Absolutely. And the guide was really specific about how important it is for teachers to stay updated, not just on, the classic techniques, but on all of the new technology and things too. That really resonated with me.
Yeah, it makes sense though, right? New cameras, editing software, everything's changing faster than ever.
Mhm.
Speaking of which, let's shift gears a little bit to the job market itself. The guide kind of hints that it can be competitive.
Yeah.
What did you gather from the data we have?
Well, the Bureau of Labor Statistics data that was cited in the guide actually paints a somewhat optimistic picture. Believe it or not, the demand for post-secondary art teachers, which includes photography, is predicted to grow faster than average over the next few years.
So it's not all doom and gloom. That's a relief.
Yeah.
But still, with competition standing out is key, right? This RoleCatcher platform you included keeps popping up. They seem to be doing some interesting things with AI and job hunting.
Oh, yeah, they really are. Think of it this way. You're a photography teacher. You're looking for a new position. You've got your portfolio, your resume, the works.
Right. Yeah.
And RoleCatcher swoops in with AI and analyzes all the job descriptions and highlights the specific skills employers are after.
Oh, okay. So it's like having a superpowered assistant who can read between the lines of all those job ads.
Exactly. And then it helps you tailor your application to emphasize the skills that they want. It's like having a secret weapon.
That's incredible. So it's not even just about being a great photographer anymore. It's about understanding how to use technology to your advantage.
You hit the nail on the head. It's a trend we're seeing more and more these days, and not even just in creative fields.
It seems like the whole world is becoming tech savvy. But let's get back to the heart of it, the teaching. Let's say you ace the interview, land the job. What does the career ladder look like for a photography teacher?
So the RoleCatcher guide outlines a pretty clear progression from entry-level positions where you might be assisting senior teachers all the way up to leading a whole department or even shaping the curriculum for photography.
Wow, so there's real room for growth in this field. That's amazing. They even had some profiles of teachers at different stages in their careers, right?
Yes. I was very impressed by the one of a senior photography teacher who had set up industry partnerships for all of their students. Talk about going above and beyond.
That's amazing. It really shows how this career path leads to some really incredible opportunities, not just for the teachers, but for the students too.
It really highlights the fact that it's not just about teaching photography, in isolation. It's about connecting students with the industry and preparing them for what comes next.
It's like you're not just teaching how to take a good photo, you're giving them a whole roadmap to a career.
Exactly. And speaking of roadmaps, one thing that really struck me going through all of this is how much the photography world itself is changing.
Yeah.
Even outside of these materials, we're seeing AI-generated images everywhere, VR experiences. It's a whole new ballgame.
Yeah, you're right. It really is. I saw this VR exhibit recently, and it just blew my mind. It was like stepping inside the photographer's head. So how does a photography teacher even begin to prepare students for a world where all this technology is changing so rapidly?
Well, the materials you sent actually touch upon this a little bit, especially when they talk about the rise of digital photography and social media. It's not just about mastering the darkroom anymore. It's about understanding how to curate an online presence and build a following. It's almost like being your own brand manager now.
Wow, that's a whole side of things I didn't even consider. It's like every photographer needs to be a tech-savvy entrepreneur now, too.
Exactly. And that's where I think that interdisciplinary aspect comes in that the materials hinted at a little bit. We could start seeing photography courses that incorporate elements of digital marketing, graphic design, even coding, who knows?
Whoa, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a future where photography students aren't just learning about composition and lighting, but also getting a crash course in like website design and social media strategy.
Yeah, it's definitely within the realm of possibility. And when you really think about it, it makes perfect sense. The more well-rounded a photographer is, the better equipped they'll be to navigate this crazy world.
Yeah, it's like they're not just learning a skill, they're getting a whole toolkit for visual storytelling in the digital age.
Exactly. And that actually brings us back to a point we touched on a little bit earlier, the ethical side of things. With AI generating images, the lines are getting really blurry, right? Like what's real, what's manipulated? How do you even begin to teach that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a whole new set of challenges for photography educators. It's not like you're just teaching someone how to use Photoshop anymore. Now you're having these conversations about authenticity and representation, and even the potential misuse of these really powerful tools.
Oh, it's a huge responsibility, no doubt.
Yeah.
And it really speaks to this broader role of a photography teacher that really came through in these materials. It's not just about technical proficiency anymore. It's about fostering critical thinking, ethical decision making. It's almost like being a mentor for navigating the complexities of the visual world.
Yeah, it's like you're shaping not just photographers, but like responsible digital citizens.
Exactly.
So we've talked about this changing landscape of photography and this evolving role of the teacher. What about the students themselves? How do you think their needs and expectations are changing in this digital age?
That's a really interesting question. On the one hand, I think students today are just incredibly tech savvy, right? They've grown up with smartphones, social media, instant access to information. They're very much used to learning at a faster pace, experimenting with different tools and platforms.
So they might be coming in with a different set of skills and expectations than students even a decade ago.
Absolutely. And I think they might be looking for a more hands-on, experiential learning environment.
So instead of just lectures, they might be wanting more workshops, collaborative projects, maybe even opportunities to showcase their work online in galleries or exhibitions.
Exactly. They want to see their work out there in the world, get feedback, build their network.
So it's not even just about what they're learning, it's about how they're learning and how they're able to share what they've learned with the world.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that's where I think traditional photography schools and institutions have a huge opportunity to really innovate and adapt.
So it's about finding that balance between honoring the rich history and principles of photography, but also embracing these new tools and platforms that are shaping the future of the field.
Exactly. Creating that dynamic learning environment that really empowers students to not only be technically skilled, but also creatively fearless.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Mm.
So given all of this, what would you say to someone out there who's thinking, this sounds amazing, but how do I even begin to prepare for a career in photography education? What advice would you give them?
I'd say, first and foremost, be a consumer of visual culture. Immerse yourself in it. Photography books, magazines, online galleries, museums, anything and everything that speaks to you.
It's like anything else, right?
Yeah.
The more you expose yourself to it, the more you learn and grow as an artist and as a teacher.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to experiment. Pick up a camera, try different genres, play around with lighting composition. Find your voice, find your style.
What about the teaching side of things? Any advice there?
I think one of the best ways to prepare for a career in education is to seek out mentorship opportunities. Reach out to photographers whose work you admire, volunteer to assist with workshops or classes, maybe even shadow a teacher for a day.
Yeah, those are great tips. Get some hands-on experience, see what it's actually like to work with students, and share your passion.
Exactly. And never underestimate the power of networking. Attend those photography events, connect with artists and educators, build those relationships. You never know where they might lead.
So be proactive, put yourself out there, soak up as much knowledge as you can.
Precisely.
That's great advice. Now, before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, where we'll be talking about some very specific strategies for landing your dream job in photography education,
Yeah.
I want to circle back to something you said earlier about the importance of experimentation. What advice would you give to someone who might be feeling a little stuck creatively, maybe a little intimidated by all the incredible photography that's out there? How can they find their own unique voice and vision?
That's such an important question, and I think it's something that every artist grapples with at some point in their journey. I'd say don't be afraid to start small. Focus on what truly moves you, what sparks your curiosity. It could be something as simple as the way the light hits a leaf or the texture of a brick wall.
Finding beauty in the everyday,
Yeah.
training your eye to see the extraordinary in the ordinary.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to break the rules. Experiment with different techniques, even make mistakes.
Sometimes the most interesting discoveries happen when we're willing to kind of step outside our comfort zone and embrace the unexpected.
Absolutely. And just remember, there are no right or wrong answers in art. There are only different ways of seeing and expressing. Trust your instincts, Follow your curiosity and just allow yourself the freedom to explore without judgment.
That is such great advice. It's a good reminder that photography at its heart is about so much more than technical skills or having a fancy camera. It's really about capturing a moment, telling a story, sharing a piece of yourself with the world.
Beautifully said.
Now, for our listeners out there who are ready to take that next step to turn their passion for photography into a rewarding career in education, we'll be diving into some practical tips and strategies in the final part of our deep dive. All right, so we've talked about this changing landscape of photography, the evolving role of the teacher, and the importance of finding your own unique vision. But now let's get down to brass tacks. For those who are ready to take that leap and pursue this career in photography education, what are the practical steps they can take? It's like, okay, I'm inspired, but where do I even begin?
Yeah, it's a bit like having a camera with all these dials and buttons, but needing to know which ones to turn, right? So first things first, that killer portfolio we talked about. Make sure it's more than just technically good photos. It needs to be you. Choose images that not only showcase your skills, but your artistic point of view.
So if someone's really drawn to architectural photography, for example, their portfolio shouldn't just be pretty buildings. It should be their unique take on pretty buildings.
Exactly. Think of it this way. You're applying for a job teaching photography. Your portfolio is basically your teaching demo before you even step foot in the classroom.
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
And of course, we can't forget about technology, especially these days. This RoleCatcher platform we keep mentioning seems like kind of a game changer when it comes to navigating the job market.
Oh, it really is. Imagine you're at a photography conference, right? And you're trying to make sure your work gets seen by the right people. The gallery owners, the publishers, the potential employers. It's like having a digital assistant who's handing out your portfolio to exactly who would be most interested based on their needs and preferences.
Whoa, that's amazing. It's like cutting through all the noise and making sure your work lands on the right desk at the right time. So for aspiring photography teachers, I'm guessing step one is get on RoleCatcher and start exploring.
Absolutely. Research those potential employers, look at the job descriptions, see what skills are in high demand. It's not just about finding any teaching job, it's about finding the right fit for your skills and passions.
Yeah, because ultimately you're going to be happiest and most successful in a role where you can really connect with the material and with your students, right? So let's say you've got a stellar portfolio, you've used the power of technology to your advantage, and you land an interview. Any advice for that nerve-wracking but exciting step?
You know those sample interview questions that we talked about in the RoleCatcher guide? Those are so helpful. Practice answering those, but don't just memorize answers. Think about the story you want to tell about your journey as a photographer and an educator.
Yeah, because it's not just about having the right answers. It's about having that genuine passion for teaching and a vision for how you'll inspire your students.
You nailed it. Don't be afraid to let that enthusiasm show. Interviewers want to see that spark, this love for photography that you'll bring to the classroom.
Yeah, it's contagious. And it speaks volumes about the kind of teacher you're going to be.
Now, before we wrap things up, I want to touch on something that we haven't really talked about yet, which is the business side of being a photography teacher. You know, a lot of teachers supplement their income with freelance work, or they even start their own photography businesses. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's fantastic. It's a great way to stay creatively engaged, keep your skills sharp, and bring in some extra income. And it can be really beneficial for your students. Imagine being able to share real-world experiences from your own photography business with them.
It's like having a teacher who's not just talking the talk, but walking the walk.
Right.
They're out there in the trenches, facing the same challenges and opportunities as the students they're mentoring.
Exactly. It adds a whole other level of credibility and relevance to your teaching.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into the world of photography education, what is the key takeaway that you hope our listeners walk away with? You know, it's that this career path, it's more than just a job. It's a calling. It's about nurturing creativity and inspiring a love for this art form and equipping the next generation of photographers with the skills and the vision to make their mark on the world.
It's about being a mentor, a guide,
Yeah.
a lifelong student yourself, and constantly evolving and adapting to this ever-changing landscape of photography. And who knows, maybe we have some future photography stars listening right now who will be inspired to embark on this amazing journey.
I hope so.
Well, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you. And to all of our listeners out there, we hope this deep dive has sparked your imagination and maybe even ignited a passion for sharing your love of photography with others. Remember, the best camera is the one you have with you, and the best teacher is the one who never stops learning. Until next time, happy shooting.